Guitar Mania, or in its original French, Guitar Manie. The guitar's great vogue in the early 19th century was marked by a sweeping popularity of the guitar all over the European continent, with Paris as its artistic center. Whether part of the parlor and drawing room fashions, or even more intimate occasions, the guitar's popularity put it at the center of European musical fashion. The popularity of the instrument had been rising since the 1750s, with daughters of royalty being the instrument's most popular players, using the guitar more as a vehicle for singing as opposed to just playing solo instrumental music. The sketches that you've seen and the music that you hear are all taken from Charles de Marescot's 1820 publication, Guitar Manie. The publication's contents describe a time when composers were saturating the market with very easy arrangements of famous opera tunes and other popular styles. The theme and variations you hear is just one of many of the book's potpourri collections of works. Marescot was notorious for putting out his publications as fast and hastily as he could, just to make more money. This drew ire from composers like Berlioz, where he writes about Marescot in his famous orchestration publication from 1853. Berlioz describes Marescot in the most unflattering ways, being wretched and ragged, as he describes this necrological tale of Marescot, a study of a knacker, adding that he killed and skinned the works of celebrated composers. But if there's one thing that Marescot knew, it's that there was no instrument that had as many published methods as the guitar. 225 different methods between 1800 and 1830. And in Vienna lies a completely different figure than that of Marescot. Simon Molitor in Vienna in 1807 wrote this incredible work for solo guitar, a large-form sonata. The work's opening adagio section shows a composer that deeply cares about the careful construction of harmonies and voice leading, dynamics and textural contrast, and perhaps more importantly, the written instructions a player of the period would need to execute this exacting style. After all, it was Molitor's wish to write a piece for solo guitar that demonstrates a better way to handle the guitar. Giuliani noticed this and thereby participated in a friendly competition and came forward with a sonata of his own to remedy the want of good quality repertoire to which Molitor had drawn attention. If there's one guitarist of this period that shared Molitor's vision of what the guitar could be, it would certainly be Fernando Sor. Erik Stensvold, professor emeritus at the Norwegian Academy of Music Oslo, gives a description that makes a lot of sense as to why Sor would be an obvious choice to continue and push this new refined vision of the instrument forward. He writes, Fernando Sor was without doubt one of the most significant guitar composers of the 19th century. He was also one of the few guitarists of his day to receive a formal musical training, notably in harmony and counterpoint, which enabled him to compose well-crafted music in different genres for a wide array of instruments. It's easy to forget that only half of his known compositions are for the guitar. This high level of training, while it would elevate his compositions, would upset amateur guitarists and hobbyists profusely. They complain, "You give us church music and counterpoint. Give us guitar music." Sor was not one to hold back his own comments about these kinds of players in his own method, where he writes, "I conceive that music, written to be fingered by the fingers at full length, must be difficult with fingers shortened at one half. But is it one of the commandments to hold one half of the hand behind the neck? Are we not often obliged to break that commandment, if it be one?" These kinds of snarky comments added to Sor's reputation negatively, but one could not speak highly enough of his compositions or his playing. The level of attention to detail Sor paid to his music in respect to the orchestration of the various textures, exploiting the guitar's ability to paint sound with various timbres, the exact voice leading and exacting note durations in the content, and even imitating orchestral instruments and expressive use of portamentos are just a few of the reasons that his music continues to stand apart from others today. Perhaps it could be said that Sor was dreaming of the orchestra inside the guitar. After all, he was mainly an opera and ballet composer. this excerpt, we hear the overture from Sohr's ballet Cinderella. Notice the large 2D opening chords that contrast with smaller textures, and the driving eighth notes in the middle of the orchestra that propel the music forward. We will hear this again. And in a similar French overture fashion, here's Mozart's Don Giovanni overture. Once again, we hear the 2D opening of primary chords, 1 and 5, followed by a contrast. And later we hear this, an approach to a half cadence. We hear these higher voices that kind of simmer and bubble above the middle voices of the orchestra, very popular. Notice the 3 strong opening 2D chords. Contrasted with a smaller texture. Notice how the thinner texture helps bring the melody forward. That's a very important orchestral concept and guitar concept. Notice those middle driving voices, like in the overture examples from earlier. Here's a special moment. You hear this a lot in French overture style, this contrapuntal writing after, more block kind of writing. Okay, here's that approach to the 5. The same thing happened in the Mozart example. Same voice leading and everything. These little harmonics are like displaying how quiet and thin the texture can become. Here's the encircling of the 5th, just like in the Mozart, using the leading tones on both ends to enclose the 5. And here's the first statement of the theme. So this is Papageno's theme. He's like a little sidekick for the hero of the magic flute. He dresses like a big bird. He's a bird catcher, kind of a comic figure. Notice the campanella on the B string. It's a technique that will be used later. And the light orchestration kind of puts a focus on the melody. Really expressive chord there with no bass. I like how holding the bass back seems to add things when you have the bass. It's an important concept. Okay, this is a very virtuosic variation. Not a lot of church music here, but notice the steady hand on the bass. He likes to hold the bass for special moments. It's a big-time orchestration trick. Once again, there's just no bass here forever. Another point is the utilization of the hammer-ons and pull-offs, the legatos are called, to kind of imitate that virtuoso violin feel here. Here's our first character piece. We're in the minor now. That voice leading is as smooth as it can be. Again, very still motion in terms of the melodic content, the harmonic content. Very steady, smooth voice leading. Got some middle voice activity right there, which we'll see more of in the second half of this. Yeah, nice middle voice that just kind of pushed itself out of the texture. And a portamento right there. Usually you don't hear those until later in the area. There's that open B campanella figure from the first variation, and then a bass note right there. That holding of the bass is very, very disciplined approach. All right, here's another character piece. A character piece is a kind of a non-technical piece in a set of variations that kind of takes the material and focuses to make a contrasting, distinct character for the music. Right up here we have this little Mozartism, that leaning, sharp second scale degree to resolve to the third, and then this chord right here leading to this 1/6/4. That's such a difficult technique to pull off, but it preserves the ideal of the voice leading being perfect or correct, as Soar puts it. Okay, this is Soar actually reminding us that he is not just a writer of church music, but he is in fact a very good guitar player. But what's funny about this, it may sound very technical, but this is actually very idiomatic music to play on the guitar. I think features a few things that the guitar does very well, and he seems to stay in this vein for the next variation. You have this fast campanella, kind of from the beginning in a triple meter. And notice the little use of bass. It helps pull everything forward, pulls the audience in. Still, very little bass. People want to get closer and closer, lean in more and more, until here's the coda. Now we don't have a lot of new material here, but that bass now is just roaring through. You have a lot of energy. The lowest note on the instrument, the low E, sustains through strong through the whole ending here. And up here we have another moment, though, of church. It's such a difficult movement right there, that augmented 6 to the 1/6/4, but it was worth it. And then no bass, all the bass. And there is Soar turning the guitar into a little orchestra.